So when I got the brakes fixed, I left my camera inside the van and it went up on a big lift, and then I couldn't get to the camera anymore. So I got precisely zero footage of the brakes actually being fixed. So again, I'm going to explain what happened, and I have a prop. It's a pan, but we're going to pretend that it's a drum brake, because the rear wheels on this van are drum brakes, and the rear is where most of the problems were. So we took them off, the wheels, and then you find, ignore the handles, your drum brake. You take that off, and inside you should have a nice smooth round surface. So it should be circular and up and down, and this isn't a great prop for this, but up and down it should be flat. It was not circular and it was not flat, but you ran your finger across it and your finger was going wobbly, 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 which isn't what you want for brakes, because you're just not going to get a good contact. It's not going to perform very well as a brake. And the fact that it wasn't round meant that as it was turning, the brakes were effectively coming in and out of contact, which is what was contributing to the thud, thud, thud feeling that I was getting as I was applying the brakes. So the insides of my drums have been just machined down. The guy checked there was enough material to be able to do that, and he machined it down so those are all nice and flat. And you've also got two shoes that fit inside. And basically when you put your foot on the brake, the hydraulics go through to a little canister thing that pushes those two brakes out into contact with the drum. The drum is the bit that is turning with the wheel, and the brakes are stationary, and then they press out, grip the drum that way and stop it from moving. So I've had new brake shoes, and the drums are machined, so now everything is flat, everything is making good contact, and the brake material that was on the shoes was in places completely worn away. So it was really important to replace those. They were definitely overdue. The other thing that is controlled through the rear in particular is your parking brake. We found on inspection that what I suspected about the parking brake was true. The pedal inside has not been feeling right ever since I bought it, and sure enough, when you put your foot down, nothing happens at the wheels. It's not been working the whole time I've owned the van. Over a year now, and no one noticed, which really gives you an idea of how essential a parking brake is on a automatic. You've got a parking gear, you don't need a parking brake as well. It's good to have both, because if one fails then you've got something to catch you on, but you don't need it to be a parking brake. I have bought wheel chocks because the reason it wasn't doing anything at the wheel is it's controlled by a wire that goes inside a casing. Ignore how I'm not going to do hand gestures to explain this. Basically, the wire had seized inside the casing, so as you put your foot down, the wire wasn't able to move. All of the springs that should return it weren't able to. It just was not moving. And getting that repaired means going all the way through the whole cable from the driver's seat all the way down to this wheel and across to the other wheel as well. I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the motivation. Like I said, you've already got a braking system, and I've gone and bought wheel chocks because it took me 5 minutes and $10. Okay, so at the front, Charlie does not have drum brakes. She's got the system we might be a little more familiar with, which is a rotary disc and a caliper that squeezes two brake pads over the disc, gripping it so it can't spin, and you get braking action. It's not at all unusual for a vehicle of this age to have drum on the back, disc on the front. So it's pretty normal, but for modern vehicles you're going to see this disc style much more often. Now, the pads that get squeezed onto that disc, they were actually replaced last summer, so they were in pretty good nick. The rotors, those had been ground flat, and they had warped again. Now, the reason for them warping again so quickly is actually to do with the back. Remember how I said the back has these two pads and it's got the pushing mechanism at the top? At the bottom, it's got a adjustment mechanism to make sure that basically every time you reverse, it engages this and it just checks that everything's adjusted properly. That mechanism had seized, so the rear brakes were not self-adjusting anymore. And as a result, I wasn't getting as much braking power from the back of the van as I should have been, and the fronts had to work harder to compensate. They were getting hotter, and the rotors warped much quicker than they should have done. So, the other problem that I had on the front was actually on the other side. This wheel was okay. The caliper, the bit that controls as you're putting your foot down on the pedal, that's the bit that does the pushing of the pads onto the disc. The other side had actually stuck on, so my brakes were just on constantly on that one corner. Getting extra hot, doing extra warping and terrible bad things, and there's mosquitoes around. Don't you just love mosquitoes? So on the fronts, I had to replace the calipers and the rotors. We ended up changing the brake pads as well, because then they will basically bed in with the new rotors nicely. So, as of right now, I have new everything on the front brakes. The back brakes have all been sorted out, and the only thing I'm missing now is a parking brake, but I have wheel chocks. Okay, so this is what a wheel chock looks like. It is a really simple piece of technology. It's just a triangle. You can make these out of just like a block of wood that you cut in half. These are shop bought, so they are slightly rounded on the front, but that's kind of unnecessary. So to use these, you line them up so they are kind of in the middle of the tyre, nice and flat to it, and you put one in front and one behind. And now I can't roll anywhere. So if you were doing any work on, say you had a flat tyre and you had to change the wheel, you would put the two chocks on the diagonally opposite wheel to the one that you were lifting up and working on. Reason for that is you're lifting this corner, you know that one's going to be on the ground. Those two could wobble about, so you would chock the wheel that you know is definitely going to be on the ground. When I'm parked, I will often actually put this one in front one on the back wheel, just because it's easier for me to get to that when I want to tidy everything away. I just go grab, and in the van. If you were facing down the hill, you would want to chock the front wheel, and you'd take this one and chock again in front of the other front wheel. And you want to basically chocking underneath the weight of the vehicle. So if I was parked facing uphill, I wouldn't put the chocks behind the front wheel, I'd put them behind the rear wheels, because that's underneath the weight of the vehicle. If I put them over here, the weight of the vehicle is half over them already. It's not going to work as well. So yeah, parking brake. Old technology, but still works.